He says, we make fun of virtue, but continue to demand for those very qualities that we are rendering impossible. You can hardly open a newspaper without coming across the statement that what civilization needs is more drive or more dynamism or more self-sacrifice, more creativity. But in a sort of ghastly simplicity, he says, we have removed the organ and demanded it to function. We make men without chests and expect them to be virtuous. All right, well, welcome to Stand Firm. Father Josh Waltz back again. Today I'm just going to talk about the culture of America. I know we kind of beat this thing to death, but it's something that needs to be talked about. And the reason I was thinking about it is because a while back in the readings, we had the second book of Maccabees, chapter 7. And I don't know if you know this story, but in the story, just a little quick recap. Go read it. You should read your Bible anyway. But in there's a mother and 7 sons. And basically what happens is they torture all 7 sons. They dismember them. I think they scalp them. They burn them. It's awful. Like it's a terrible, terrible martyrdom. And the mother has to watch the whole thing, right? And then they eventually kill her. And even when they get down to the final son, which is the youngest, the mother looks at the son and is like, don't you dare deny your faith for me. God gave you to me, and God will give you back to me. And so the son dies, and then they kill her. It's awful. But here's the thing. Why did they? This is what's so amazing to me. Do you know the reason why they all died? They wouldn't eat a piece of pork. That's something on Sunday I do after Mass. I eat bacon and eggs like after Mass. We do this all the time. A piece of pork. They wouldn't eat a piece of pork. And when you read that, when we used to read that, we saw courage, we saw honor, we saw self-sacrifice, we saw all of these beautiful virtues. Now, I think people read that, and they're like, pork? Like, why not just eat it and then say you're sorry to God later, We've just lost this understanding. Like, we don't see the great stories like that as courageous anymore. We see them as like fanatics. Crazy people. And then that kind of led me in. When I was studying in seminary, I took a trip to Ireland. And when we were in Ireland, we went into the hill country. And in the hill country, they have these, I think they're called priest rocks or altar rocks. And they're scattered throughout the hillside of Ireland. And they're a strong reminder of how the faith survived in Ireland. Because back when these, I think it was in the, I want to say 1600s. I could be wrong. We can fact check that, right? Anyway, call me out. I don't care. Somewhere around there, right? Like the fathers of the church. I love the fathers of the church. They're always like, somewhere in Scripture it says this. Somewhere in Ireland at some time they did this. So anyway, they had these priest rocks, and there was a great persecution. I think it was by the British, and they basically what would happen is the Catholic faith was outlawed, and so they would set up these rocks, and that's where they had Mass. And the location of the rocks was only known by the Catholic faithful, and it was only told orally. So they didn't write any of these down. They didn't have any maps. They didn't have any of that stuff. And so, but at these rocks, they would celebrate Mass. They'd have lookouts. They'd have all these people making sure that they didn't get caught. But they did get caught occasionally. And it was not uncommon, our tour guide told us, it was not uncommon that when they came to arrest the priest, one of the men in the congregation would exchange outfits with the priest. And he knew he was going to die. So why? Because he believed on that altar, it wasn't bread and wine. He believed on that altar was something that was a greater good for the people of Ireland, for his family, than his life was. And it came through the hands of the priests, and without the priests, they had no Eucharist. I don't think people would do that anymore. I really don't. There's a great theologian, his name is Alexander Solzhenitsyn. He was a Russian theologian, and he got sent to the gulags, the Siberian death camps, basically, for writing a letter to a friend about Joseph Stalin. They got a hold of the letter. He got sentenced to 8 years. 8 years in a prison camp for that. When he was released, he came to the United States, and he gave an address at a university. And in that address, it was a commencement speech, and he said to the students that were there, he was talking about American culture, and he said this. He said, of course there's extraordinary individuals, right, in a culture, people that will stand up and do what's right, but as a country, as a culture, as a nation, America is not interested in principles. We're not interested in what's right and what's wrong. We're interested in what's most beneficial, what makes the most money, what is most self-serving. What is most striking about the American culture is its lack of courage. It's lack of courage. Couldn't believe that when I was coming over here. Somebody sent me a video of yet another person, yet another business that went woke, right? Because everybody's too afraid to stand up for what's true. We lack courage, and it's seeped into the church. We lack courage to get up, to stand up and say what's right. We're going to be branded. God forbid. Oh, God forbid we're branded. You're already branded. If you're watching this video, you're already branded. Because you believe, I'm guessing, in marriage between one man and one woman. Branded. Bigot. Jerk. Intolerant. This is what's so incredible to me. We have all this stuff around us, right? C.S. Lewis, one of the great theologian, one of my favorite writers of all time, he had a great quote too. He said, we make fun of virtue. Now remember, this is in 1940. He says, we make fun of virtue, but continue to demand for those very qualities that we are rendering impossible. You can hardly open a newspaper without coming across the statement that what civilization needs is more drive or more dynamism or more self-sacrifice, more creativity. But in a sort of ghastly simplicity, he says, we have removed the organ and demanded it to function. We make men without chests and expect them to be virtuous. We laugh at honor, and then we're shocked to find traitors in our midst. We castrate our society and then tell men to be fruitful. We are surrounded by so much garbage. I had a spiritual director one time, he said, garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you're taking in, that's how you're going to live. And it's around us all the time. Trust me, I teach in a school. I've been teaching my whole priesthood at universities and high schools. The stuff that kids are exposed to, if you're not standing up and doing something about that, if you're not yourself blocking out all this noise and craziness, how are you going to be virtuous? How am I going to be virtuous? I sometimes I get nostalgia for like childhood stuff. And the other day, like Looney Tunes, I bought the whole set of Looney Tunes because the cartoons just suck right now. They're terrible. And there's no virtue in them. And, Bugs Bunny, he was whatever. He had a little bit of virtue in him, a tiny bit, At least there was good and evil. But anyway, I got thinking about my childhood, and I don't know if you guys remember He-Man. He-Man was he was kind of a Christ figure. But Prince Adam was his name, so it's kind of cool, right? Prince Adam. So you have Adam in the garden, and he's just kind of this weak, wimpy sort of prince in the kingdom. But then when he's called upon, he needs to be the man, He-Man. Then he has this sword and calls on Castle Grayskull, and all this stuff happens, and his tiger pet turns into this battle cat. And anyway, I was like, I want to watch an episode of He-Man. I haven't seen this forever, so I downloaded the first episode. The first episode is about Skeletor. Okay, Skeletor is the really, really bad guy, right? And he finds this diamond, and this diamond can make people do things, right? You just have to look into the diamond, and then you're mesmerized and enchanted under a spell, and then you got to do things, whatever Skeletor tells you. So he uses it and gets almost the entire kingdom to fall, right? And he's like, I'm going to, Skeletor, I reign, I'm going to be king, whatever. And then He-Man comes along, and it's really awesome because there's really no fight between good and evil. He-Man just takes the diamond and crushes it. And the spell is completely broken on everybody. And then, He-Man, Skeletor's like, damn you. He was a kid's show. He's like, dang you, He-Man, And at the end of the episode, though, this is what was so shocking to me. It was so shocking, okay? At the end of the episode, I'm going to quote this for you. He-Man comes on after the whole episode's over, and he says this: in today's story, kids, Skeletor was looking for a shortcut, a quick way to riches and power. And you may know some people like that, always looking for a way to get ahead of everybody else, no matter who they hurt. but it doesn't work that way. The people who succeed are the ones who work hard for it. So don't be fooled, and don't sell yourself short. And remember, the right way is always the best way. And I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, they were teaching virtue at the end of the cartoon. They were telling you what they were trying to teach you, and it's about self-sacrifice. I was so shocked by that. But we don't have that. I mean, look at Yellowstone. Look at Game of Thrones. Look at Bachelorette. There's a real champion, right? Oh, champion, virtuous woman there. Or The Bachelor. Gosh, man, full of virtue, natural goodness. They're all idiots. And then you mix in TikTok, Twitter, all these things. I mean, TikTok is a machine of stupidity. That's all it is. And all you see is kids mirroring what they see. That's because there's no great stories being told anymore. And so if you want to fight against this, then start surrounding yourself with goodness, truth, and beauty. Read the great stories. And I'm not just talking about the Bible. I'm talking about men and women who have done great things. Share those with your kids. I'm reading a new book. It's called The Wingfeather Saga. Phenomenal. Phenomenal. It's like a sort of a little bit more than Chronicles of Narnia, a little bit less than Lord of the Rings. But just fabulous, all about self-sacrifice, discipline, virtue, and it's a great story. I want to tell you a story about more of a modern-day hero, I guess. If you guys have ever seen, I totally stealing this story from Father Mike Schmitz. I saw the movie, but he told the rest of the story. I didn't know it. Fabulous. So Black Hawk Down, if you remember Black Hawk Down, it was in Mogadishu in the 90s. It was supposed to be a very simple operation. They were supposed to go, the Army Rangers were going in, the Blackhawks were coming. They were going to, I think it was some terrorist organization. They were going to extract people, get out. It was, get in, get out, be done. It went terribly wrong. The Army Rangers got pinned down. The Blackhawks couldn't get to them. So they're trying to fly in. And the first one, Mike Durant, is the pilot of the first Black Hawk. That gets shot down, hence Black Hawk Down. So he's down and he's injured and he's on the ground. He's surrounded by Somali militia. And basically what happens is there's two other snipers on another Black Hawk. Their names are Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart. And Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart are radioing in, and they're like, let us go in. Let us go rescue Mike Durant. And they're like, we can't let you go in. It's too dangerous. They're like, we don't care. He's our guy. We're going in to get him. And on the fourth time that they radioed, they finally said, all right, if you go in, you're probably never coming out. And they're like, we don't care. We don't leave a soldier behind. So they get dropped in behind enemy lines. They get surrounded by Somali militia. They end up being killed. Their bodies are hacked to pieces. They're paraded through the streets, right? And Mike Durant still ends up getting captured. About 5 years later, Mike Durant gets released, and he comes back to America. And Gary Gordon and Randy Shugart are awarded the Medal of Honor. And Mike Durant is asked to present it. So he goes to the hometown of Gary Gordon, and he thinks he's just going to show up, hand the medal to the family, give them a hug, talk with them, maybe have a cup of coffee, whatever. The whole town shows up, and they want him to give a speech. And he kind of panics. He goes to the library, and he's like, I just looked up books on the Medal of Honor, right? So he finds this book on the Medal of Honor. He's paging through it, all these stories of these heroes that did all this self-sacrificial stuff. He said it was just overwhelming. And he said, when I got to the end of the book, I flipped to the last page. The last time that book was checked out, ready for this? 20 years prior, by 13-year-old Gary Gordon. Gary Gordon read about these men and women of sacrifice, and he said, I want to do that. And he did. You and I are surrounded by goodness. There's so much more good in this world than there is evil. So quit filling yourself with it. Be bold. Do you want to be countercultural? Get rid of all this stuff. Nobody's doing that. Everybody's signing up for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. We need heroes. If our greatest, as Solzhenitsyn said, if our greatest characteristic as a nation is that we're cowards, we lack courage, then we need to start surrounding ourselves with goodness so that we build virtue, we build courage, and we build heroes. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Be holy. Be great. I don't care if you subscribe or not. We love you. Keep coming back.